The Roman Senate fell silent as the messenger's words echoed through the marble halls. Egypt's annual grain harvest could feed Rome for 6 months. What they didn't say aloud was far more terrifying. Without Egypt, Rome would starve within weeks. In 48 BCE, as Julius Caesar's ships approached Alexandria's harbor, he wasn't just arriving in another conquered territory. He was entering the economic heart of the Mediterranean world, a civilization that had perfected the art of wealth accumulation over 3 millennia. The pharaohs hadn't just built monuments, they had constructed the most sophisticated economic machine the ancient world had ever seen. The Nile's annual flood wasn't merely a natural phenomenon, it was the foundation of an economic empire that made Rome's wealth seem modest by comparison. Egyptian granaries stored surplus grain that could sustain entire populations during famines. Their tax collection system was so efficient that Roman administrators would later adopt it wholesale. The pharaohs had transformed the predictable flooding of the Nile into a financial weapon that could make or break civilizations. But Egypt's true power wasn't just in grain. The kingdom controlled the lucrative spice routes from India, the gold mines of Nubia, and the papyrus industry that supplied the ancient world's bureaucracy. While Rome conquered through military might, Egypt had conquered through economic necessity. Every Mediterranean city depended on Egyptian goods, and the pharaohs knew it. The administrative system that managed this wealth was more advanced than anything Rome had developed. While Roman governors extracted tribute through force, Egyptian scribes had perfected a bureaucracy that maximized productivity from every acre of farmland. The pharaohs had created a machine that turned the Nile's mud into Mediterranean dominance. Egyptian banks in Alexandria didn't just store wealth, they created it. The sophisticated credit systems, international trade networks, and currency exchange mechanisms that operated from Egyptian ports were centuries ahead of Roman financial practices. When Caesar needed funds for his campaigns, he didn't turn to Roman moneylenders, he sought Egyptian backing. The Romans discovered that Egypt's economic influence extended far beyond its borders. Egyptian merchants had established trading posts from Spain to India, creating a network of economic dependencies that could be leveraged against Rome's interests. The pharaohs had built an empire not through conquest, but through indispensability. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the economic warfare between Egypt and Rome, hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments. What other ancient civilizations do you think posed the greatest economic threat to Rome's dominance? The Roman legions had never faced an enemy like the pharaoh's military machine. While Rome's strength lay in standardized tactics and discipline, Egypt had perfected the art of adaptive warfare across 3,000 years of continuous conflict. When Mark Antony allied with Cleopatra, he wasn't just choosing sides in a Roman civil war. He was betting on a military tradition that had outlasted empires. The pharaohs had faced Assyrians, Persians, and countless Nubian invasions. Their military system had evolved through constant adaptation, creating a force that combined Egyptian naval supremacy with foreign military innovations. Egypt's navy controlled the eastern Mediterranean not through brute force, but through technological superiority. Egyptian shipbuilders had perfected vessel designs that could carry more soldiers, more supplies, and more siege equipment than Roman warships. The quinqueremes and massive cataphract ships that defended Alexandria weren't just larger. They were floating fortresses equipped with artillery that could devastate Roman fleets. The pharaohs understood something that Rome initially missed. The Mediterranean was a highway, not a barrier. Egyptian naval bases in Cyprus, Crete, and along the Levantine coast created a network of military outposts that could support extended campaigns. While Roman legions were designed for rapid conquest and occupation, Egyptian forces were built for sustained maritime operations. But Egypt's military threat went beyond ships and soldiers. The pharaohs had mastered the art of alliance warfare. They didn't just fight enemies, they turned Rome's allies against each other. Egyptian gold financed rebellions in Judea, supported resistance movements in Syria, and funded opposition to Roman rule across the eastern Mediterranean. The siege equipment that defended Alexandria during Caesar's campaign wasn't primitive. It was cutting-edge technology that incorporated innovations from across the known world. Egyptian engineers had studied Roman siege tactics and developed countermeasures that turned city walls into death traps for attacking forces. The famous Lighthouse of Alexandria wasn't just a navigation aid, it was a military observation post that could coordinate naval defenses across the harbor. Most dangerous of all, Egypt could afford prolonged warfare. While Rome's economy strained under the cost of distant campaigns, Egypt's wealth allowed the pharaohs to sustain military operations indefinitely. They could hire mercenaries from across the known world, rebuild fleets faster than Rome could destroy them, and fortify positions while Roman senators worried about bankruptcy. Want to discover more about the military innovations that shaped ancient warfare? Like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the strategies that built and destroyed empires. The greatest threat Egypt posed to Rome wasn't economic or military, it was political. The Pharaohs had mastered the art of turning Rome's strength into weakness, using the Republic's own political system to tear it apart from within. Cleopatra VII wasn't just the last pharaoh, she was the culmination of a political strategy that had been 3 centuries in the making. Since the time of Alexander the Great, Egyptian rulers had understood that controlling Rome meant controlling Roman leaders. They didn't need to conquer the Republic, they needed to seduce it. The relationship between Julius Caesar and Cleopatra wasn't a romance. It was a political alliance that threatened to reshape the Mediterranean world. Caesar's months in Alexandria weren't vacation time. They were intensive negotiations that could have created a Roman-Egyptian empire spanning from Britain to India. The pharaohs offered Caesar something no Roman had ever possessed: legitimacy that transcended military conquest. Egyptian political influence operated through a network that Roman politicians couldn't match. The pharaohs maintained diplomatic relations with kingdoms across the known world, from Parthia to Nubia. They could coordinate opposition to Roman expansion, finance resistance movements, and create coalitions that forced Rome to fight on multiple fronts simultaneously. When Mark Antony chose Cleopatra over Octavian, he wasn't just picking sides in a Roman civil war, he was choosing a political system that offered an alternative to republican governance. The pharaohs represented absolute power, combined with economic prosperity, a tempting model for Romans tired of Senate debates and political gridlock. The donations of Alexandria in 34 BCE revealed Egypt's true political threat. Antony and Cleopatra weren't just redistributing conquered territories, they were creating a new form of government that blended Roman military power with Egyptian administrative efficiency. This wasn't conquest, it was political evolution that could have made Rome obsolete. Egyptian propaganda was more sophisticated than anything Rome had developed. The pharaohs understood that controlling information meant controlling public opinion. They sponsored poets, historians, and artists throughout the Mediterranean, creating a cultural network that portrayed Egypt as the rightful heir to Alexander's empire and Rome as a barbaric upstart. The political genius of Egyptian strategy lay in its patience. While Roman politicians fought for immediate power, the pharaohs played a game measured in generations. They cultivated relationships with Roman families, influenced Roman education, and gradually shaped Roman attitudes toward Egyptian culture and governance. This deep dive into ancient political warfare reveals strategies that still influence modern diplomacy. What do you think? Could these Egyptian tactics work in today's political landscape? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The final and most enduring threat Egypt posed to Rome wasn't military conquest or political domination. It was cultural transformation. The pharaohs had weaponized civilization itself, creating a cultural influence that would outlast both the Roman Republic and the empire that followed. When Roman soldiers first entered Egyptian temples, they weren't just witnessing religious ceremonies, they were experiencing a level of architectural sophistication and artistic achievement that made Roman buildings seem crude by comparison. The pharaohs had spent millennia perfecting the art of cultural intimidation, creating monuments that proclaimed Egyptian superiority without saying a word. Egyptian intellectual influence penetrated every aspect of Roman life. The Library of Alexandria wasn't just a repository of knowledge, it was a cultural weapon that attracted the brightest minds from across the Mediterranean. Roman scholars, engineers, and philosophers traveled to Egypt not as conquerors, but as students, returning to Rome with ideas that would fundamentally alter Roman civilization. The religious revolution that Egypt sparked in Rome was more dangerous than any military campaign. Egyptian gods didn't just compete with Roman deities, they offered more compelling spiritual experiences. The cult of Isis spread through Roman society like wildfire, providing emotional fulfillment that traditional Roman religion couldn't match. Roman women, in particular, found in Egyptian goddess worship a spiritual empowerment that Roman patriarchal religion denied them. Egyptian medical knowledge revolutionized Roman healthcare. Egyptian physicians practiced surgery, understood anatomy, and developed pharmaceutical treatments that Roman doctors couldn't match. When wealthy Romans fell ill, they didn't consult Roman physicians, they sought Egyptian healers. This medical dependency created a cultural influence that penetrated the highest levels of Roman society. The artistic styles that emanated from Egypt transformed Roman aesthetics. Egyptian-influenced architecture, sculpture, and painting became fashionable among Roman elites. The pharaohs had created a cultural standard that made Roman artistic tradition seem provincial. Roman artists traveled to Egypt to study techniques that had been perfected over millennia, but Egypt's most dangerous cultural export was its conception of absolute rule. The pharaohs had perfected the art of divine kingship, creating a political theology that made Roman republican values seem chaotic and inefficient. When Julius Caesar and later Augustus adopted Egyptian-style ceremonies and titles, they weren't just borrowing foreign customs, they were implementing a system of governance that would ultimately destroy the Roman Republic. The mathematical and engineering knowledge that Rome acquired from Egypt enabled the construction of aqueducts, roads, and buildings that defined Roman civilization. Paradoxically, Rome's greatest achievements were built using knowledge conquered from Egypt. The pharaohs had created a civilization so advanced that even their conquerors became dependent on Egyptian expertise. When the last pharaoh died in 30 BCE, Egyptian cultural influence didn't end, it intensified. Roman emperors adopted Egyptian titles, Roman architecture incorporated Egyptian elements, and Roman religion absorbed Egyptian practices. The pharaohs had achieved something no military conquest could accomplish. They had transformed their conquerors into cultural copies of themselves. This concludes our exploration of why Egypt was Rome's most dangerous enemy. The pharaohs proved that the most effective conquest isn't military, it's cultural. What do you think? Can you see examples of this kind of cultural influence in the modern world? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden forces that shaped ancient civilizations.